The Timberwolves are coming off of one of their best seasons yet in franchise history, making a run to the conference finals. After this run, they randomly decided to switch up the roster that they had. They gave up Karl-Anthony Towns to the New York Knicks for Julius Randle and Donte DiVincenzo. Well, the problem with this is those guys have not been panning out how they would prefer, and it is because of this trade they're currently 11th in the Western Conference. It just shows the true impact that Karl-Anthony Towns had to this team, and going forward, it's going to be a very big struggle for the Timberwolves to replace what he did. Because of this trade, it really has me wondering, thinking back, what are the worst trades that we've seen in NBA history? Now, for these trades, I'd go ahead and rule out any draft night trades, such as Kobe Bryant getting traded on draft night for Vlade Divac, because I don't consider these as much of a bad trade as much of it is just horrible scouting. For these trades, I decided to use horrible GMing ideas, team fits, or overall these players just majorly underperforming. Hello everyone, I'm Mason, and thank you all so much for 1,000 subscribers. I really appreciate it a lot, and let's get straight into some terrible trade talk. For our first trade, we're going back, way back, all the way to 1968. When we talk about bad trades, this one is the textbook definition of it. The Philadelphia 76ers were fed up with Wilt and his supposed stat padding. As we all know, he was a guy that went out there to get his buckets. Wilt threatened to retire multiple times. They decided to do what? Get rid of him. The Philadelphia 76ers would end up trading Wilt Chamberlain to the Los Angeles Lakers in exchange for Darrell Imhoff, Archie Clark, and Jerry Chambers. Now, if you're anything like me, you've never heard of any of those three guys, which just speaks volume to how bad that trade truly was. After the Lakers picked up Chamberlain, they would make 4 finals appearances with Wilt on the team, and they would end up winning one finally in 1972. Guess who? Wilt Chamberlain was the finals MVP, averaging 19 points, 23 rebounds, and 2.5 assists. Now, while that trade may be bad, have you ever seen one player be a part of 2 awful trades? If you haven't, then look no further than TNT's very own Charles Barkley. In 1992, Charles Barkley was sent away from Philadelphia to Phoenix to play for the Suns. Now, he was 28 at this time, meaning that he was in his prime. Well, the problem with this was the Suns gave the 76ers a package of Tim Perry, Andrew Kang, and Jeff Hornacek. Now, Jeff Hornacek obviously being the most notable of those 3 names. Now, Hornacek, who at this point had played for the Phoenix Suns ever since he was originally drafted in 1986, would end up not playing his best basketball, would end up slowly falling off, and not just that, he only played for the 76ers for about a year and a half, as in the 1993-94 season, he would end up being traded to the Utah Jazz. Now, what also makes this trade so horrible is the fact that in his first season for the Phoenix Suns, Charles Barkley would end up winning the MVP award. So in this season, the Phoenix Suns would end up not only making the NBA Finals, but Charles Barkley would bring home the MVP award in his literal first year on the team, which just showed already the Phoenix Suns dominated this trade. Now, you would think that there couldn't be a worse trade for Charles Barkley. Well, there was. Following the 1996 season, in which the Rockets had won back-to-back NBA Finals, they would go on to try to trade for Charles Barkley, who at this point of his career was 32 years old and declining. Houston would trade their entire depth of their team, keeping Hakeem Olajuwon and Clyde Drexler, but they would give up Sam Cassell, Robert Horry, Chucky Brown, and Mark Bryant, meaning that it was pretty much just the big 3 left in Houston. Now, their first year together, they would make a Western Conference Finals run, losing to the Utah Jazz, followed by back-to-back first-round exits and 1 year missing the playoffs. So naturally, Charles Barkley and Clyde Drexler were done in the NBA, and Hakeem Olajuwon left to go to Toronto, as the team had completely fallen apart at this point. Now, when you see what happened to the pieces that were involved in this trade, it makes even more sense of why it was so terrible. The guys at Houston gave up Robert Horry and Sam Cassell would end up turning into some very fine NBA players. Robert Horry, a 7-time NBA champion, as we've seen, winning titles as a huge role player of a part of multiple dynasties. Sam Cassell would play on some not so great NBA teams. He was proven to be a pretty solid bucket getter in his time in the league and a very good point guard throughout his career, and ended up playing until the 08 season, in which he would end up winning an NBA championship as well. And if the Rockets would have just held on to these young pieces instead of going after an aging Charles Barkley, they may have been able to snag another ring. While we're on the topic of the Houston Rockets, the next trade up is one of the ones that a lot of people still talk about to this day, as it was a little over 10 years ago. Following the 2012 NBA season, the Oklahoma City Thunder had just made the NBA Finals, which they lost to the star-studded Miami Heat. At the time, James Harden was the sixth man for the team. He wanted a big old contract, and the problem was Thunder gave Russell Westbrook a max contract, a 5-year deal at the time, and Serge Ibaka had a 4-year, $48 million deal. So the Thunder were going to pay him a deal of 5 years, $54 million, and he was looking for a deal for at least $60 million. So because of this, they traded him to Houston, in which he got a 5-year, $80 million deal, so it looks like he secured his bag. In hindsight, obviously James Harden turned into one of the best players in the NBA for a few year span and one of the best scoring primes we have seen. The big issue with this trade was what the Thunder got in return. They got Jeremy Lamb, 2K legend, Kevin Martin, 2 first-round picks, which one of them would turn into Steven Adams, and a second-round pick as well. And the Thunder also shipped out Cole Aldridge, Daquan Cook, and Lazar Hayward. It really does sting for the Thunder knowing that they could have had James Harden, one of the best scorers in the NBA, if they would have just given him the money that he wanted and also rightfully deserved. He had just come off of a season winning 6th Man of the Year, averaging almost 17 points a game while shooting almost 40% from 3 on nearly 5 attempts a game. He was an elite bench scorer, averaging 31 minutes a game, and provided so much value to the team. The problem was in the fact of the money, as he deserved to be paid more, and the Thunder would not do it. It all ended up being okay in the long run, as the Thunder would get their get back when it came to trading for Shai Gilgeous-Alexander from the Los Angeles Clippers in the Paul George deal. The next trade up on the list might arguably be the worst one on this list. Kevin Garnett and Paul Pierce were huge members of the 2008 Boston Celtics championship team, ending their 22-year drought with the roster of Ray Allen, Rajon Rondo, KG, and The Truth. After a few huge playoff losses, especially to the Miami Heat led by LeBron James and the New York Knicks led by Carmelo Anthony, the Celtics finally decided that enough was enough. They shipped out the 35-year-old trio, including Paul Pierce, Kevin Garnett, along with the newly acquired member of the Boston Celtics, Jason Terry. In exchange, they got Chris Humphries, Marshawn Brooks, Gerald Wallace, a couple of other dudes, and 3 first-rounders along with a pick swap. Now, the pick swap is the important part of this, as Celtics co-owner Grausbeck had noted that this pick swap was just the harmless icing on the cake of the deal, as it was the only way he could get a little bit of extra draft capital from the Nets. Now, the thing with this was the Nets did absolutely nothing with this core. They fell out of their primes easily. Paul Pierce was gone after just a season. This was supposed to be a championship contending roster, and very quickly did people realize how wrong they were. Now, the reason that pick swap was so significant was because the Nets were so bad, they ended up worse than the Boston Celtics. And well, the pick swap means that the Celtics would end up getting the Nets pick in 2017, 2 years after the deal. The Celtics would end up winning the draft lottery. They traded down to get the 3rd pick. The 76ers take Markelle Fultz, the number 3 pick in the 2017 draft, Jason Christopher Tatum, along with the 2016 pick that they got in this trade, used to draft Jaylen Brown, and well, yeah, we all know the rest. Our last trade of the day, the Paul George deal, being arguably the worst one on this list as of so far. The Clippers wanted to make a blockbuster deal, and they ended up picking up Paul George with this trade, which then would also lead Kawhi Leonard to leave the Toronto Raptors to sign to pair the elite two-way players together. Kawhi Leonard won the Finals MVP for the Toronto Raptors, and following the season and his contract being up, he went to the Los Angeles Angeles Clippers. The Clippers had one of the biggest off seasons that we've seen in recent history, as they also would trade for Paul George that same offseason to pair them together. Well, the problem is the Clippers didn't just pay for Paul George, they sold the entire city of Los Angeles pretty much to get the two-way wing from the Thunder. They gave up Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, who now is becoming one of the best players in the NBA, as well as Danilo Gallinari, a serviceable journeyman, and 7 first-round picks, which was 5 first-rounders along with 2 pick swaps. The thing is, with this trade, those picks turned into the Thunder's currently dominant roster. 2022, the pick turned into Jalen Williams, who is looking to make his first All-Star appearance as of this season, as well as Trey Mann, who was a very good bench player, did not have enough opportunity on the Thunder, so he was shipped to Charlotte. The reason I regard this as pretty much the worst trade on this list, the Clippers are already done with the Paul George era in Los Angeles, as Paul George is now a member of the 76ers. Kawhi Leonard's health took a sharp decline in the past 2 or 3 years, and on top of that, Paul George had trouble staying healthy as well in certain seasons. With Paul George leaving, it just squished any drop of hope that the Clippers had left to make this trade worth their while. The Thunder still have plenty of time to optimize off of this trade. Now, the Thunder still own another first-round pick unprotected from the Clippers, along with a pick swap in the following 2 seasons, meaning that we still have plenty of time to gauge how this trade will turn out. Overall, it kind of looks like the Thunder have fleeced this entire trade, and it looks like it's only gonna get worse. What do you think is the worst trade that we discussed today? Me personally, I think that Nets and Celtics trade with Kevin Garnett and Paul Pierce when they're 35 years old. The reasoning behind that one is 100 times worse than the Paul George trade, so I think it might be that one. That one's really bad. So, and the Celtics are still dominating the league thanks to the Brooklyn Nets. So thank you to Brooklyn for making the Celtics the team that they are now. Make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you have not already. We just hit 1,000 subscribers not too long ago. We are already climbing to 1,100. So thank you for watching today's video, and I can't wait to see you guys next time. Thank you for all the love recently, and see you next time, cuh.